I wanted to begin by telling you a little bit about myself, and it informs the approach that I use running growth at Slack. This is a picture of me. I am this little dude down here doing 107 damage to this fire demon during our monthly D&D session at Slack. Cal, one of our founders and the CTO, and I founded this group of people playing D&D together. I've been playing a lot of D&D from high school on through college, and I started a game company right after graduating from college. 6 or 9 months later, I got a couple rounds of venture capital funding, ran that company, as it turns out, into the ground after a few years. And then I persevered in making games and joined Electronic Arts, and I produced and designed The Sims Social, which was the Facebook version of The Sims. Only lasted for about a year, and I'm like, oh, I fucking hate working on games. Terrible, terrible businesses, as it turns out. And then I went and worked at a slew of different consumer and enterprise startups, building apps like Couchsurfing, which people often say is like Airbnb. Truth be told, it's 80% Tinder, 20% Airbnb. People would tell me that and always be like, so my cousin, I'm like, dude, I know all about your cousin. She is having quite a gap year right now. Yeah. So I joined Slack in early 2015 as the new user experience PM. I had met Stuart and Cal because my gaming startup had one of the same angel investors as the company that eventually became Flickr. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Slack. Do people here know what it is already? Okay, cool. And then we'll talk about people, and then applying something that, an idea that I stole from someone, like all great ideas, about tactical empathy. So this was going to tell you about Slack, but if you already know what it is, that is really fantastic. And this is our company's mission, to make your working life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive. We do this by rooting our product in what is best for the human beings who are using it. And I find that when you recognize the humanity in someone else and you root your product design in the knowledge of that humanity, only then can you really make someone's life better, because otherwise you don't understand what their life is like. As I said, I run the growth team at Slack. This is our growth chart. I think actually later today, US time, all of our numbers are getting updated, so I haven't put our final DAU number here. I joined just before the first anniversary. Congratulations to me. No, I'm just kidding. Man, running the growth team at Slack is, as it turns out, a high-velocity job. I have not learned this much working on a product since I was running my own company, and the lessons are much less painful, which is also really nice. So our team, the growth team, is a product team, and I know that's different from the growth teams at a lot of other companies, which are rooted in marketing. This happened because I was the new user experience PM. I joined when we were maybe 70 or 80 people. We are now 700 to 800 people in slightly less than 2 years, which has been quite an experience in emotional flexibility. Sort of at the beginning of this year is when we're like, all right, we're going to stop calling it new user experience. We'll start calling it growth. We brought in growth marketing. So what we do is from the beginning of your experience on slack.com or downloading an app all through conversion to paid. So we're in little fits and starts throughout the life cycle of the company, or of you're using the product. Things that work for us are, I think, different than things that work for other types of apps. You know, there's like one weird trick things and growth hacky type stuff. That actually is very effective for many types of products in which you can, you know, like apply a filter to something, post that photo to Facebook, and you've gotten the value of that app in the first, 30 seconds or a minute of using it. But Slack is a kind of slow burn, and our experiments that we run, we're all looking at these downstream metrics of activation that happen a week or 2 or 3 or even like 4 months into the life of a team on Slack. So we really have to think a lot about who these people are and how they're using the product. So I use something called tactical empathy. This is not the feeling of empathy, which is valid and good, though oftentimes people think that they are being empathetic when they're in fact being sympathetic. I cannot recommend this book highly enough, Never Split the Difference. I almost didn't read this book because it's about negotiation, and as a woman, I'm a woman, if you can't tell, I would look at something like negotiation, already feel like I was losing, like women are not good at negotiation, and weirdly, the acknowledgement of that fact made me feel like I was set up to not do a good job doing this. But I find that sympathy is really this dark side of empathy. When you're like, oh yeah, I'm being empathetic to my user because she's a lot like me. She also plays D&D. She hates Donald Trump. She loves her dog. And that's not empathy. I like that person because I'm a lot like them. And I feel like I understand them, but it can be deceptive because you often don't. And you don't really understand, I think, like people in general in these big broad swaths like user personas and things like this. Stuart likes to say this to people, and I've now told this story a couple of times. I always feel a little bit hesitant about doing it, but when we were really small, Stuart would do a lot of product reviews with all of the product managers. And you'd sit there, going through your deck, showing him the prototype, whatever you were building, and when he was really upset with some terrible decision that you'd made, he would say, close your eyes. And you're like, fuck, oh. Close your eyes and pretend you're a human being. And it felt so shitty the first time and the 7th time that I heard this. Because I'm like, fuck you, Stuart, I am a human being. I'm right here in front of you. But really, what he meant is pretend you're a specific human being, and a human being that is different from who you are today. So I will pretend that I am Jose. And what this means is I'll sit in front of some deck or a prototype that my team and I have been building, and instead of approaching it from my perspective as someone who really knows the product really well and has a specific job, who builds Slack, using Slack, I would pretend to be Jose, who had a fight with his wife last night and is in snarled up traffic trying to get to work. As soon as I get to work, my boss, who is such a dick, is on me saying, hey, find the McAllister file. That meeting is in 3 minutes. I'm like, fuck, I forgot about that meeting. And then I load up Slack and I'm looking at it and this overwhelming cascade of information is coming at me. Is this the interface that I can easily look at and be like, oh yeah, here's the McAllister file and I know how to access it? So putting yourself under that kind of duress, that's really tactical empathy. And tactical empathy can be very hard to apply. There's a cognitive bias called the curse of knowledge. If you Google the curse of knowledge, this is the first Google image result, just FYI. Really dug hard for this one. It's really easy to get afflicted with this, and this is why your best developer cannot, to save her own life, explain the product to a customer, right? She knows way too much. If you really deeply understand something, it is very difficult to pretend that you don't understand it and then explain the concept to someone. I think we're in the generation of people who taught our parents how to use email and browse the web, and a lot of our parents ended up, going to Facebook and just having a post where it was your name or your brother's name, and you're like, what is that? And then you're like, at Christmas looking over there, and you're like, oh, you think that you're searching for my profile. No, you're posting to your profile with my name. But it would be hard to explain, exactly how that worked and what you were doing. So in order to do that, you need to embrace the beginner's mindset or to be that white bitch who talks to you about Buddhism. I'll just go there right now. Shoshin, which is the attitude of openness, eagerness, and a lack of preconception when studying a subject at an advanced level, which mimics the way that a beginner would study that subject. We do this in a few ways at Slack. Because empathy is exhausting and cognitively expensive, you have to actually take time to put yourself in that mindset in the same way that you need to take time to pretend that you're a human being. If it was easy to do this, the world would be a very different place. So one of the ways that we do that is use the buddy system. We are very, very critical of our product. Stuart tells people often on their first day at work, set a profile photo in the next half an hour or you're gonna get fired. But he also says, Slack is a piece of shit, but you're all doing a great job. And we are very, very critical of our product. I'm deeply unhappy with many of the things in onboarding. And so we bring that criticism to the buddy system, and we sit with another person, and we pretend to be a specific person. So on the growth team, we develop the new user experience, and we have people, an engineer and a designer will get together once every other week, sit down at the computer, and they actually will make up like a little company. And it's a little bit like the gaming thing, right? You're putting together your character sheet. Yeah, bringing it all around. And you're playing this little quest where, you work at like a Moo, right? Or a paper design company. And you are considering using Slack. So you get to slack.com and you start to ask yourself questions when you get to a certain part of the product. So it's not just enough. Personas can be really great, I think, especially for general buckets of experience, but it's impossible to be like, I am Mabel, a 34-year-old person who's this generic person who isn't a real human being, who's under duress and who has problems and solutions. So this one, do I have enough information to make this decision, is something that I think we fail at a lot. This is what our sign-in page looks like, to my everlasting shame. Oh my God, it's so terrible, especially on mobile, where you're on a mobile device and someone is asking you for a team domain, which is really a URL, but a lot of people don't know what URLs are. I have had this conversation so many times. And so it's only with great shame and self-loathing that I show this to you. But this is the kind of thing that we look at in the product, and it's so easy to let it go by because we do this 15 times a day when we're creating these fake teams to test out our user experience, but oh, God, it's painful. So the other thing that we do is talk to our users. We obviously have a lot of data science, user research type people who we work with a lot. Also, everyone at Slack does support, which is very gratifying when someone writes into Zendesk or via Zendesk to say, hey, I have a problem with this thing, and I want to talk to a product manager. And then you're like, let's go, bitch. I'm that product manager, which is pretty funny. And hearing actually directly from someone and also needing to stay in kind of the Slack personality and tone, which is very courteous and respectful, assumes that you're a person with good intentions. So you're both trying to be really the best version of yourself while hearing someone be deeply unhappy with something that chances are you actually built or worked on or designed, is a pretty interesting experience, and it helps you develop a sense for what people are going to be upset by. And your designers develop this sense, your PMs, your engineers, obviously your customer experience team, and your QA people are all going to start to develop this idea of what it feels like when there's a bad mismatch with the market. And the whole point is that you hopefully get better at predicting what people are going to like. Stuart is one of the people who I've worked with who is just the best at doing this. It's really crazy, and I think we owe a lot of, especially our initial kickoff of success, to the fact that he is very good at putting himself in the mindset of someone else and really pretending to be that person. And yes, it is annoying that he practices what he preaches, especially in that moment when you're like, I am a human being. Please stop fucking telling me that. So I'm going to go into this particular example of something that we kind of saved by predicting, but not totally. So this is today mostly what the new user experience looks like. We are constantly running experiments and changing small things. So if you went to create a team, you might not necessarily even get this right now. But Slackbot is our little mascot / BFF, our gender neutral bot who helps you and kind of shows you around Slack today, but then also it kind of stops, even though you've already been set up to have a conversation with this bot, and we're starting to teach you about a conversational UI. So we thought, what if Slack could be even more helpful and able to answer follow-on questions from you? So my team developed this. We refer to it internally as Slackbot Help. If you go into your Slack, you can actually DM with Slackbot today, and it will answer questions. It will only answer questions about Slack, though. So if you say something straightforward, which is like the kind of thing that we started with, we're like, this fucking works. Download the iPhone app. We have a bevy of apps. Sarah Park, who's our product writer, wrote many of these responses, along with Anna Pickard, who does all of our design notes, which we are famous for. So we thought that this was pretty good. And in testing it, we're like, oh yeah, not understanding that we had this huge stack of assumptions that we are standing on top of when using it, which is that people would get a conversational UI and that they would be asking these types of questions because we told them just to ask those questions, so of course they will be. God, how wrong was that? So then, this is now how we fail. In a couple of weeks, or maybe last week, there was this hilarious meme that was going around. Some chatbot conference had this great tote bag that they gave out. When do we want bots? Or what do we want bots? When do we want them? I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. I'm like, oh God, it's me, it's terrible. So we originally had Slackbot failing in much more unique ways. But what's strange is that it was actually fun to do. And we're like, oh no, people are gonna sit here. So we showed it to Stuart, had him sit down with it, and he just started typing in things that I will not repeat on stage. And we're like, oh shit, this is what everyone is gonna do. Everyone is gonna become that 14-year-old playing The Sims, locking the sim in the room by themselves and watching them die. Yeah, that's definitely, saw a lot of that. That's how most game designers play games. So we ended up defaulting to this frankly kind of garbage response. And so we're like, all right, if it was fun to break it, it would drive people nuts. It would also really pollute the data that we are getting in terms of how many messages were going back and forth and whether these were successful interactions or not, because people would end up doing things like this, which I found a lot of examples on the internet of people doing this. And so it's still even failing. I'm going to call you Todd. You can call your teammates. So this was this middle one is exactly really what we were trying to avoid, that it would pick on that one keyword and have this kind of a response. So in as much as you can try to become a person, I think I better switch out Jose for Steve Clemeco, fucker. And then you're still obviously going to make mistakes, right? And continuing to iterate on this process and really building time in development for becoming this person and this really specific person who wonders, Todd, what is life? Has been really great for us, though we still make a lot of mistakes and definitely do not have it figured out. So if you're coming to hear me tell you about how we have it figured out and here's the secret sauce, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Cool, and that's it.